As Wang Yan's usually indifferent eyes filled with shock, Lin Dong gave him no time to recover. With a cold glint in his gaze, he pressed the golden wheel of light in his palm heavily against Wang Yan's body. Sizzling. The golden light wheel crashed into the golden keratin layer on Wang Yan's skin. Sparks flew, and a sharp, grating sound filled the air. Crack. The sharpness of the golden light wheel was terrifying. As the brilliant golden light surged, the originally near-impenetrable essence spirit keratin layer began to fracture with cracks spreading rapidly. As the cracks appeared, Wang Yan's pupils contracted. His essence spirit keratin layer was his protective shield. It had once withstood a full force strike from 3/9 Nirvana stage experts without breaking. He could hardly believe that such a close-quarters defense was crumbling in Lin Dong's hands. Senior brother Wang Yan, you've lost this time? As disbelief spread across Wang Yan's face, Lin Dong, his blood-stained face forming a chilling smile, whispered those words. Boom. At the exact moment Lin Dong's voice fell, the essence spirit keratin layer could no longer withstand the sharpness of the dragon spirit wheel. With a resounding crack, it shattered, the golden light dimming and retreating back into Wang Yan's body. With his defense broken, Wang Yan twisted his body to narrowly avoid the oncoming dragon spirit wheel. A sharp edge grazed his chest, leaving a bloody gash from which fresh blood sprayed. Wang Yan's fighting style was indeed vicious. Even while dodging such a deadly attack, his fist shot forward with precision, aiming straight for Lin Dong. Bang! Wang Yan's fist slammed into Lin Dong's chest, where a green light surged to defend him. Yet, the overwhelming force caused Lin Dong's blood and energy to roil violently within him. Heh. Instead of retreating, Lin Dong smiled through the pain. Though with the blood splattered across his face, his smile looked ghastly. Even Lin Dong had to admit Wang Yan's brutality. His ruthless desperation would suppress anyone of similar strength. But this time, that brutal approach failed. The young man standing before Wang Yan, with his deep, murderous gaze, was even fiercer. If Wang Yan was ruthless, Lin Dong was even more ruthless. After taking Wang Yan's punch head-on, Lin Dong tilted his body to use the momentum, his foot shifting with a strange, snake-like movement. The green light around him condensed and swelled, transforming into the leg of a green dragon. Boom! The sinister and icy green dragon leg, with its green light pulsating, lashed out like a whip, smashing into Wang Yan's body. Thud. A deep thud echoed as the ground beneath them cracked from the force. Wang Yan's body was sent flying like a cannonball, shattering dozens of massive boulders along the way. Splat. When Wang Yan finally managed to steady his disheveled form, he couldn't hold back anymore. Amidst the astonished stares of the crowd, he coughed up a mouthful of blood. Whoosh. As the blood sprayed from Wang Yan's mouth, his primordial energy momentarily stagnated. Before he could recover, the sound of piercing wind rang out. The sharp sound made Wang Yan's expression change. Without thinking, he retreated rapidly. His eyes darted ahead, catching a glimpse of a shadow charging toward him with the force of a berserk bull demon. There was no refined technique, just pure, raw brutality. Lin Dong had completely turned his body into a weapon. It seemed reckless, but there was a chilling force behind it. Crash! Lin Dong's body slammed into Wang Yan, the collision resounding through the field. The sound of it left everyone breathless, and in the distance, Huan covered her mouth with her hands. She knew Lin Dong fought ruthlessly, but this scene still shocked her. It wasn't just her. Even Xiao and the others, including the elders watching from the high platform, were stunned. As the two bodies collided, the violent rebound sent both of them flying. They skidded across the ground, leaving trails hundreds of meters long before coming to a halt. The fierce, terrifying auras they had exuded moments before had both weakened drastically. Both were seriously injured. The entire battlefield fell silent as they watched the two figures struggle to rise, the ground soaked with blood. Many felt their hearts tremble. This battle had been brutal beyond words. Wang Yan struggled for a few moments, but ultimately couldn't get back on his feet. Lying on his back, covered in blood, he gasped for breath, the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. His gaze, though, was locked on the distant figure, who was also struggling but trying to stand. However, it was clear that the other person, too, was utterly exhausted and unable to rise again. A stalemate. You didn't beat me, Wang Yin rasped, his voice hoarse. Thud. But just as his words trailed off, that distant figure staggered, teetering but still managed to stand. Blood dripped from his body, staining the ground beneath him. Lin Dong wiped the blood from his face, the pain within his body almost making him lose consciousness. Yet he forced himself to stay upright, turning around under the gaze of countless trembling onlookers, and began walking shakily toward Wang Yin once again. In the distance, Huan, watching the bloodied yet smiling man walking step by step toward Wang Yin, couldn't hold back her tears. She bit her lip and was about to rush forward when EngSubs held her back. Don't let him fail at the last moment. Wang Yin won't admit defeat unless Lin Dong finishes this, EngSubs whispered softly. Huan clenched her teeth, her delicate hands tightly gripping each other as she struggled for a moment. In the end, with reddened eyes, she buried her face into EngSubs' shoulder, unable to bear watching any longer. She knew a little about what Wang Yin had been through over the years. Those experiences had forged the terrifying ruthlessness in him. But now, his ferocity was being completely crushed by Lin Dong, which made it clear that whatever Lin Dong had endured must have been even more soul-shaking. In those early days, when Lin Dong had no background, facing enemies coming at him like wolves from all sides, he had dragged his weary, blood-soaked body through a path of carnage to get where he was now. Thinking of this, Huan's nose tingled. Who could have known how heavy the burden was on that usually smiling, youthful face? EngSubs gently stroked Huan's hair and sighed softly, murmuring, "That guy. He really is reckless." Under the gaze of countless eyes, Lin Dong, staggering slightly, picked up the black tree branch that had been knocked aside earlier. Dragging it behind him, he slowly approached Wang Yin, who was slumped against a rock. Lifting the black tree in his hand, the sharp, iron-like branches pointed directly at Wang Yin. The slender young man raised a brilliant but icy smile and said, "Senior brother Wang Yin, you've lost." Wang Yin, leaning against the rock, stared straight at the young man in front of him. Despite the smile on Lin Dong's face, his eyes radiated a bone-chilling coldness. Even Wang Yin, known for his ruthless nature, couldn't help but feel a creeping chill. He gazed at Lin Dong for a long time before his eyes dimmed. Leaning against the rock, he exhaled a long breath and said, "Dao's sect finally has an extraordinary figure this time." Lin Dong smiled, but the black tree branch remained poised in front of Wang Yin without showing any sign of retreat. "I've lost." Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Wang Yin slowly closed his eyes. His admission, spoken softly, allowed everyone watching on the mountaintop to finally unclench their fists in relief. Wang Yin had admitted defeat. On the ravaged mountaintop, as the wind swept through, lifting debris and fallen leaves, everyone stood still, staring at Wang Yin, leaning lifelessly against the rock with his eyes closed. A complicated look gradually appeared in their eyes. Wang Yin had lost. The very same Wang Yin who had even defeated EngSubs, one of the most outstanding among the younger generation, had been defeated, and the one who forced him to concede was merely a newly inducted disciple who had joined the Dao sect less than a year ago. This outcome was something no one could have predicted. "This guy really is incredible." The disciples looked at each other, reading the same profound admiration in each other's eyes. As for the disciples of the Wild Hall, after a brief moment of shock, their faces began to light up with excitement and pride. They knew that after this battle, the standing of the Wild Hall within the Dao sect would undoubtedly rise. The sneers and mockery they had endured before, those wouldn't come so easily anymore. Who would dare say the Wild Hall was still at the bottom? This year's hall competition had made Lin Dong the most dazzling figure. "Sister, he really won." Hearing Wang Yan's admission, Huan couldn't help but clench her jade-like hands tightly, her wide eyes filled with joy and relief. EngSubs nodded slightly, a smile emerging on her usually calm face. Though this meant Lin Dong would now hold the command of the Dao sect disciples during the sect competition, It was surely better than having Wang Yin in charge. This Lin Dong, he hides his strength well. Every time, his trump cards are more surprising than the last. EngSubs said softly, her gaze flickering as she watched the young figure standing in the battlefield, holding the black tree that had forced Wang Yin to admit defeat. You're strong too, sister. If you hadn't held back, senior brother Wang Yin might not have beaten you either. Huan giggled, her arm wrapped around EngSubs. Lin Dong's victory had clearly lifted a weight off her heart, and her radiant smile and lively demeanor quickly returned. EngSubs shook her head, not responding to the comment. In truth, her strength was not inferior to either Wang Yin or Lin Dong, but she lacked the decisiveness and ruthlessness that both possessed. That sort of instinct could only be developed through trials of blood and fire. On the high platform, after a brief moment of astonishment, Chen Zhan and the others quickly regained their composure. Even they, with all their experience, couldn't suppress the slight smile of relief that appeared on their faces. What an unexpected young man. Chen Zhan chuckled, glancing at EngSubs, seated in the center. EngSubs' face remained as serene as a still pond, but upon closer inspection, one could detect a hint of a smile in his eyes. Clearly, the leader of the Dao sect was extremely pleased with the outcome. Announce the result. Hearing EngSubs' command, Chen Zhan nodded, stood up, and scanned the crowd before his deep voice resonated across the mountaintop. The final victor of this hall competition is Lin Dong of the Wild Hall. As the champion, he will hold command of the Dao sect disciples in the upcoming sect competition. Chen Zhan's powerful voice echoed across the mountaintop, entering everyone's ears. As his last word faded, a thunderous cheer erupted from the crowd, and every gaze fixed on Lin Dong was filled with awe. This battle had cemented Lin Dong's reputation at the pinnacle of the Dao sect's younger generation. Whoosh! As the cheers reverberated through the mountains, Lin Dong let out a long breath. With a flick of his wrist, he put away the black tree, then raised his head toward the high platform and smiled. Uncle Chen Zhan, I'd like to hand over the command to senior sister Xiao. I'm not particularly good at leading. While it might have been thrilling to lead the Dao sect disciples in the intense battles of the sect competition, Lin Dong knew he was more of a lone wolf. Leading and commanding others wasn't his strong suit, and he didn't want to risk dragging the whole group down because of it. Hearing this, EngSubs was momentarily stunned, while Huan smiled sweetly and said, he's quite sensible. EngSubs shot her a look. You were so worried before, and now you're acting all smug? Her words made Huan blush deep red as she quickly ducked her head, no longer daring to speak. On the high platform, Chen Zhan was also momentarily taken aback by Lin Dong's words. He turned to look at EngSubs, who, after a brief moment of contemplation, nodded. In truth, EngSubs was indeed the most suitable candidate for command. Though Lin Dong was cautious by nature, he acted according to his own limits. In the sect competition, where anything could happen, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't lose control if something unexpected occurred. Since you brought it up yourself, we'll follow your suggestion. The command will go to Xiao. Furthermore, as the winner of the hall competition, you're entitled to a reward. Rest for a day or two, and once you've recovered, visit the sect leader to receive it, Chen Zhan said with a smile, his eyes filled with admiration. Lin Dong's refusal to claim the command and his suggestion to hand it over to EngSubs earned him considerable respect, even from someone as stoic as EngSubs. A reward? Lin Dong raised an eyebrow in interest. Considering EngSubs' position, whatever the reward was, it was bound to be impressive. In the distance, Wang Yin had already staggered to his feet, his expression indifferent. Without saying a word, he picked up his heavy sword and turned to leave. His solitary figure walking away seemed almost heartbreakingly lonely. EngSubs and Huan watched Wang Yin's retreating figure, and the smiles that had just appeared on their faces gradually faded. No matter what, they still held deep feelings for the person who had once taken care of them like an older brother. Senior brother Wang Yin, Lin Dong suddenly called out as everyone on the mountaintop watched Wang Yin leave in silence. You've already won. What more is there to say? Wang Yin's footsteps paused, but he didn't turn around. His voice remained indifferent. I don't particularly like the Yuan sect either. If there's an opportunity during the sect competition, perhaps we could cooperate. I wonder if senior brother Wang Yin would be interested? Lin Dong said with a smile. Lin Dong was well aware that the sect competition would be incredibly dangerous, and it was inevitable that the Dao sect would face the Yuan sect. Wang Yin's strength would be a significant asset, and the Dao sect needed someone as formidable as him. Wang Yin froze for a moment, slowly turning his head to look at Lin Dong's smiling face. For a long while, the man who had remained expressionless even when they fought to a stalemate seemed like he wanted to smile, but ultimately, the smile never came. Instead, he simply nodded slowly toward Lin Dong. When the time comes, tell me who to kill, and I'll kill them. Also, you've done well. EngSubs is indeed the best candidate, but I don't have the same open-mindedness as you. Wang Yan's voice, laced with a faint, sinister tone, lingered in the air before he turned and left. Lin Dong, watching him go, couldn't help but smile. Though Wang Yin was reclusive and stubborn, he wasn't as disagreeable as one might have thought. As he watched Wang Yin leave, Lin Dong stretched lazily. With the tension easing from his mind, the soreness and exhaustion that he had forcibly suppressed surged through his body like a tide. The overwhelming sense of fatigue made even lifting his arm feel difficult. Feeling the weakness in his body, Lin Dong let out a wry smile. This battle had been even more intense than the one against Yao Ling, but fortunately, his strength had improved since then. Unlike last time, he hadn't been left severely injured and unconscious for half a month. It's finally over. Despite the fatigue, a smile of relief appeared on Lin Dong's face. He exhaled heavily, then raised his head to gaze at the distant sky, where dark clouds seemed to be slowly creeping in. The sect competition. Yuan sect, I'm curious to see just how overbearing you really are. A cold, sharp smile tugged at the corners of Lin Dong's lips. He was eagerly anticipating that day. The hall competition that had shaken the entire Dao sect finally came to a close as the sun dipped toward the horizon. The Dao sect disciples, still carrying the lingering shock and excitement from the battles, slowly dispersed. This year's hall competition had been full of unexpected twists. EngSubs had surprisingly been defeated by Wang Yin, and just when everyone thought Wang Yin would claim victory, Lin Dong had stepped in. With ruthless ferocity, he had stunned the onlookers and defeated Wang Yin, becoming the brightest star of the competition. The sudden turns of events left everyone breathless, yet deeply exhilarated. The brutal battle between Lin Dong and Wang Yin had made their scalps tingle, and they couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. Without a doubt, this battle would go down as one of the most iconic in the history of the hall competition. Though Lin Dong ultimately emerged victorious, he had voluntarily handed over the command to EngSubs. This action surprised many disciples, earning him their admiration. Not everyone could make such a gesture. This act only further cemented Lin Dong's already soaring reputation, elevating him to a status that seemed to surpass even veterans like EngSubs and Wang Yin. 3 days had passed since the hall competition, but the Dao sect was still abuzz with excitement. The disciples were tirelessly discussing the brilliant battles that had unfolded, and the fervor hadn't died down in the slightest. During those 3 days, Lin Dong had fully recovered from his injuries. Although the battle had been draining, he hadn't sustained any internal damage. With his powerful body, most of his injuries had healed after just 3 days, leaving him in good condition. Meanwhile, the Wild Hall was in a celebratory mood. Many disciples walked with their heads held high. After all, it was the first time in 100 years that the Wild Hall had claimed the championship, so their pride was well-deserved. On a secluded mountain peak within the Wild Hall, Lin Dong sat cross-legged on a stone, his eyes closed. Around him, the primordial energy of heaven and earth gently swirled, slowly seeping into his body. After about an hour of peaceful cultivation, a faint sound of something cutting through the air could be heard. Lin Dong's eyes slowly opened, and he looked toward the source of the sound. An elderly figure approached. It was none other than Wu Dao. "Are your injuries all healed?" Wu Dao landed beside Lin Dong, smiling as he asked. "More or less fully recovered," Lin Dong replied with a smile and a nod. "You performed well this time." "Heh, Those little rascals in the wild hall are practically strutting around with their tails in the air now, Wu Dao chuckled, glancing at Lin Dong with a hint of pride in his eyes. He had personally brought Lin Dong into the Dao sect and placed him in the wild hall. Over the past year, he had watched Lin Dong grow from a new disciple into one of the top figures of the Dao sect's younger generation. Lin Dong chuckled. After being suppressed by the other 3 halls for so long, it was only natural that the wild hall would take this opportunity to vent. A little pride wouldn't hurt anyone. The wild hall has been quite lively these past few days. Even disciples from the other halls have been coming around, probably wanting to meet you. Also, Huan has stopped by a few times, but you were resting, and she didn't seem too pleased about that, Wu Dao said with a smile. Lin Dong chuckled. He could imagine Huan grumbling about him being too full of himself. Since you've recovered, it's time to go see the sect leader. As the champion of the hall competition, I'm sure the sect leader has some good rewards for you, Wu Dao said. Hearing this, Lin Dong's eyes lit up. Being a practical person, he valued rewards that could genuinely enhance his strength far more than any fame or reputation. Wu Dao, seeing Lin Dong's eager expression, couldn't help but laugh and curse playfully before waving his hand and turning to leave. Lin Dong quickly followed behind him. Lin Dong followed Wu Dao down from the secluded mountain peak deep within the Dao sect. On the peak, there were no grand halls, only a small bamboo house. The atmosphere was peaceful and tranquil, making one's tense mind relax almost involuntarily. The sect leader is waiting for you inside. Go ahead. Wu Dao pointed toward the bamboo house and said. Lin Dong nodded, stepped forward, and unceremoniously pushed open the door. Inside the bamboo house, the light was soft. At the front, there was a bamboo table, and sitting serenely behind it, dressed in a white robe, was EngSubs. His jade-like face exuded a deep, unfathomable aura, calm and vast like the ocean. Disciple Lin Dong greets the sect leader. Lin Dong respectfully cupped his fists and bowed. For even someone as defiant as him felt a measure of respect for the Dao sect's master. Have a seat, EngSubs said, lifting his gaze with a gentle smile as he pointed to the mat in front of him. Without hesitation, Lin Dong sat down on the mat, his posture upright and composed. This time, I owe you thanks, EngSubs said with a hint of amusement as he looked at the young man before him. I'm a disciple of the Dao sect. These matters should be considered part of my duty, shouldn't they? Lin Dong shrugged and smiled. Wang Yan's situation is somewhat the Dao sect's fault. There were things we couldn't interfere with, so we let him be. But what I want to thank you for is not stopping him, but for handing over the command to Xiao Xiao, EngSubs said with a smile. You and Wang Yan are both no less capable than Xiao Xiao. If it came down to life or death battles, the two of you would be the best candidates. However, the sect competition requires more than just strength, and Xiao Xiao is better suited for that, he explained. Lin Dong nodded, fully agreeing with the assessment. EngSubs looked at Lin Dong, his expression warm, and spoke softly. I know about your past, and I also know you have secrets, perhaps some even I don't know. I don't mind. As I've said before, no matter what, you are now a disciple of the Dao sect. As long as you don't harm the sect, this place will always stand behind you. Lin Dong was momentarily stunned, but then felt a warmth in his heart. He lowered his head slightly and replied, Disciple understands. All right, let's get to your reward for winning the hall competition, EngSubs said with a smile. With a wave of his sleeve, 3 beams of light shot out and floated in midair. These 3 items are all extraordinary. You may choose one, EngSubs said. Lin Dong, intrigued, looked up at the floating beams of light. In the first was a small, fiery red ruler, covered with flame-like patterns. It radiated a scorching, violent energy. Judging by its power, it seemed even stronger than his black dragon sky roaring seal. The second item was a black armor the size of a human head, emitting wisps of black mist that snaked around its surface like serpents. It was a defensive spiritual treasure, something Lin Dong had never owned before. Both items were clearly powerful, their auras indicating they were high-grade heaven-tier spiritual treasures, rare enough to spark fierce competition if brought to the outside world. Lin Dong was tempted by both, but he didn't rush to make a decision. His gaze moved to the final item. The third object was a small, black wooden tablet, about the size of a palm, inscribed with faint, indistinct runes. Compared to the previous two, the tablet seemed quite ordinary. However, its simplicity piqued Lin Dong's curiosity. Thanks to his sharp spiritual perception, he could faintly feel a strange energy emanating from the black wood. For a brief moment, it made his heart race. "Have you decided?" EngSubs asked with a smile, noticing Lin Dong's contemplative expression. Lin Dong's eyes flickered. The fiery red ruler and black armor were undoubtedly practical, and as high-grade heaven-tier spiritual treasures, they were far stronger than his black dragon sky-roaring seal. Either would significantly boost his combat strength. But that black wooden tablet, something about it kept tugging at his thoughts, making his gaze repeatedly return to it. "Sigh, whatever. If I choose wrong, I'll just have to live with it," Lin Dong muttered to himself after a long moment of hesitation. Finally, he pointed to the wooden tablet wrapped in light and said, "I'll take that one." As his voice fell, a flicker of surprise passed through EngSubs' eyes. In the bamboo house, Lin Dong's hand hesitated briefly before settling on the glowing orb around the wooden tablet. "Are you sure?" EngSubs asked with a smile. "Yes," Lin Dong nodded. Having made up his mind, he felt no further hesitation. Although high-grade heaven-tier spiritual treasures were rare, they weren't valuable enough to make him cling to them. Seeing Lin Dong's resolve, EngSubs smiled faintly. With a wave of his sleeve, the other two light beams were retracted. He extended his hand, and the black wooden tablet slowly floated into his palm. As the light around the tablet faded, Lin Dong finally saw that it was inscribed with intricate and mysterious runes that seemed to flow across its surface as if alive. "Sect leader, what is this tablet? What does it do?" Lin Dong asked curiously. "This is the stasis tablet," EngSubs said calmly. "Stasis tablet?" Lin Dong was momentarily confused. In ancient times, there existed a divine artifact known as the Stasis God Tablet. When activated, it could completely freeze time and space. Those caught within it would be utterly helpless, unable to resist. EngSubs explained as he gently twirled the black wooden tablet in his hand. Even as he spoke, a glimmer of awe flashed in his eyes at the mention of the Stasis God Tablet. "Oh!" Lin Dong's eyes widened. The Stasis God Tablet sounded incredibly powerful. The ability to freeze even time itself. What kind of terrifying power was that? And this Stasis Tablet? How is it related? Lin Dong asked, his curiosity piqued. The Stasis Tablet was crafted as a replica of the Stasis God Tablet. "Did you really think our Dao sect possessed such a divine artifact?" EngSubs chuckled. "A replica?" Lin Dong rubbed his nose, not particularly disappointed. He hadn't expected to get his hands on a legendary divine item so easily. Even though it's just a replica, the Stasis Tablet surpasses most high-grade heaven-tier spiritual treasures. It hasn't quite reached the level of a pure primordial treasure, but it's somewhere in between, EngSubs explained. Lin Dong nodded. Pure primordial treasures were rare, even among the super sects, and since this Stasis Tablet was merely a replica, no matter how powerful it was, it likely couldn't reach the level of a pure primordial treasure. Additionally, the Stasis Tablet doesn't possess the terrifying power of the original, but when activated, it can freeze an opponent for a brief moment. In a battle between powerful cultivators, that moment should be more than enough, don't you think? EngSubs smiled. Lin Dong's eyes lit up as he nodded. In a fight between experts, even the smallest opening could be fatal, let alone freezing an opponent for a moment. If he had possessed the Stasis Tablet during his fight with Wang Yin, the battle would have been much easier. "You've got a good eye, kid. Take it. This treasure requires spiritual energy to activate, but given your proficiency in that area, I don't think you'll have any problems," EngSubs said with a smile as he tossed the Stasis Tablet to Lin Dong. "It's an ownerless item, and I've already removed the barriers for you. All you need to do is perform a blood ritual, and it will be yours to command." Lin Dong quickly reached out to catch it. The black tablet felt cool to the touch, and as he examined it more closely, he realized it wasn't made of wood or metal. Its material remained a mystery. Without hesitation, Lin Dong pricked his finger, letting a drop of blood fall onto the stasis tablet. As soon as the blood touched it, a faint glow emanated from the tablet, and Lin Dong felt a subtle connection forming in his mind. The light around the stasis tablet grew brighter, and then, to Lin Dong's surprise, it slowly floated up before turning into a streak of light that shot directly into his forehead, disappearing from sight. As the stasis tablet merged into his forehead, Lin Dong closed his eyes, his consciousness sinking into his Niwen palace. In that small world of spiritual energy, he saw the black tablet floating silently, surrounded by ripples of spiritual energy that continuously flowed into it. As he poured more of his spiritual energy into the tablet, Lin Dong began to understand its profound intricacies. Lin Dong remained in this state for several hours. During that time, EngSubs sat quietly, unmoving like a meditating monk, showing no signs of impatience. As the sunlight outside began to fade, Lin Dong finally opened his eyes. There was a flicker of strange light in his gaze, and then he extended his hands, forming an unusual and somewhat awkward seal. Stasis. Lin Dong's gaze fell upon a butterfly fluttering by the window. He aimed his hand seal at it, and a soft whisper escaped his lips. Buzz. As the two words left his mouth, an invisible yet incredibly mysterious ripple suddenly surged out from the center of Lin Dong's forehead. The moment that ripple reached the butterfly, its wings, which had been gently flapping, froze mid-motion. The butterfly's entire body seemed to be trapped in the seams of time and space. The sight was incredibly strange and eerie. However, this bizarre scene lasted only for a brief moment before it shattered. The butterfly, startled, flapped its wings frantically and quickly fled the room. What an amazing stasis tablet! Lin Dong's eyes gleamed with excitement as he licked his lips and grinned. Although the stasis tablet didn't possess strong offensive power, its eerie ability to freeze time was enough to make even Lin Dong's heart race. He thought to himself that if his opponent had such an ability, a life-or-death battle would be incredibly difficult. The only downside is that it consumes a lot of spiritual energy, Lin Dong added regretfully. He had only used the stasis ability for a few seconds, yet the consumption of his spiritual energy was alarmingly high. There's no such thing as perfection in this world, EngSubs chuckled. Lin Dong smiled sheepishly, realizing that he had been a bit too greedy. The stasis ability was already terrifying enough. If it could be used freely without limits, it would be far too unrealistic. If you like it, that's good. In fact, according to the rules, not even the champion of the hall competition would normally be able to claim the stasis tablet, EngSubs said with a meaningful tone. Hee, then I must thank the sect leader for being so generous, Lin Dong responded, understanding the implication. If it weren't for his actions in stopping Wang Yin and later handing the command over to EngSubs, obtaining the stasis tablet would have been much more difficult. EngSubs couldn't help but laugh before saying, in just over 6 months, the sect competition will take place. Be mindful and stay prepared. As he spoke, a shadow of darkness passed over EngSubs' jade-like face, revealing a rare solemnity. Are the Yuan sect disciples that strong? Lin Dong asked with a slight frown. The most elite Yuan sect disciples are known as the 3 minor kings and the 8 spirit generals, EngSubs explained slowly. The 3 minor kings and 8 spirit generals, Lin Dong murmured. The Yuan sect is divided into 8 divisions, and the 8 spirit generals are the top disciples from each division. As for the 3 minor kings, EngSubs paused, then continued, they were personally trained by the 3 sect leaders of the Yuan sect. Each one of them possesses monstrous talent and stands at the pinnacle of the younger generation in the Eastern Mystery region. Lin Dong's eyes narrowed, and he took a deep breath. He hadn't expected that the 3 minor kings would be personally trained by the 3 sect leaders of the Yuan sect. These were some of the most powerful individuals in the Eastern Mystery region. Just how terrifying would their disciples be? When you face them in the sect competition, be extremely cautious, EngSubs warned. Then, with a faint smile, he added, but there's no need to fear them too much. In the previous sect competition, when Zhou Tong participated, he gathered a group of allies, killed one of the 3 minor kings, severely injured another, and forced the third to flee. Lin Dong was momentarily speechless. Zhou Tong was indeed a formidable figure. No wonder he held such a revered position among the Dao sect disciples. Even just hearing about his feats made Lin Dong's blood boil with excitement. Understood, sect leader, Lin Dong nodded, taking EngShuanzi's words to heart. It seemed the sect competition would be anything but ordinary. Spend this time cultivating diligently. The sect doesn't expect you to accomplish anything too extraordinary in the competition. Just focus on protecting the other disciples as much as possible, EngShuanzi said with a wave of his hand. Yes. With that, Lin Dong respectfully bowed and left the bamboo house. EngShuanzi watched Lin Dong's retreating figure, gently stroking the surface of the table. From Lin Dong, he could faintly see a resemblance to Zhou Tong. Both possessed extraordinary talent that defied expectations. He couldn't help but wonder if this year's sect competition would turn out differently because of Lin Dong's presence.